Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We are creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is actress and producer Hedy Wong. Ms. Wong, welcome.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I've read into your bio, saw the trailer. I know I have a lot of great things, and you have a lot of great things to share. So I want to kind of dive in and just congratulate you on your success of, producing and releasing your first feature film, Takeout Girl. I know that must have taken you a significant amount of time to put together, and there was a significant amount of maybe hardships or challenges that you obviously faced during that journey. Could you express a little bit more about Takeout Girl and that journey? How was it for you?
You want the long story or the short story?
I'm trying to dive in. I'm trying to know what's going on.
So, like with most creators, there's always something that, spurs us to take a leap or take that, make the initiative, right? For whatever project or goal you are aiming for. And for me, I just got to a point in my life in LA where I was just like, my parents are in the Bay Area, and I started to feel really guilty that I was away from them for so long. And they're immigrant parents, so they're they're traditional. They came from a third world country, so of course, from that background, you can't blame them for their concerns, for their they just prefer stability because they came from a place of absolute no stability. And so my mom would always say something like, Hedy, you have to be smart enough to pivot. And what that really means is be smart enough to quit when you know something's not working. and she's referring to my time in LA and of course my dad wants me back home. And so I told myself, and I was at the time I was doing some commercials, a lot of videos, music videos. And I'm like, that ain't no career either. So I told myself, all right, well, I was influenced by like my musician friends, right? Rappers. Mm-hmm. And I see them grinding on their journey. And one main difference I see is that they invest in themselves. Nobody's co-signing them. Ain't no label coming to play. They really are entrepreneurs and pushing their own art until they get leverage to, perhaps do some collaborations with bigger platforms. But I was really inspired by that. I was like, how come us actors, we're just sitting around auditioning, hoping for that call for bookings? I was like, that's ridiculous. So I was actually really inspired by what they were doing with their mixtapes. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write my little own version of my little film mixtape, and this will be the last thing I do before I quit, right? This is the first and last thing I'm gonna do. Of course, I set the goal a little high. I'm not a filmmaker per se. I know a lot of people, I'm more of a producer. I know how to get the crew together, but I don't know how to operate the camera myself. And so I started with Takeout Girl. I started writing the premise, and, the easiest thing is to just write what you know. So I wrote what I know, and I based it on everybody I know, and this is where a slight dry snitching comes in. But but with Hassani, we reworked it a lot. We polished it up. We streamlined it, took a lot of characters out. It was a lofty, for me, being coming straight out of Chinatown, it was the lofty goal. I was like, what the heck? Like, how am I going to pull this off? But my mom said, you got to learn how to quit. And I'm like, I'll quit after this. So I wrote the script, the original draft, and there was somebody, a producer I was trying to get it off with, but that went south. It was just bad faith. He was manipulative and all that. And so I was like, I can't, I'd rather not make the movie because I want to do it right. Thank goodness Lauren, who plays Saren in Takeout Girl, he saw me kind of shelving the project, after I was trying to make it for about, I wrote it for about a year, and the second year or so, it's 2 years going, 2-3 years. And he saw me shelving my, attempts to get it made. And he was like, Hedy, I know this great director, his name is Sonny, and he could do a lot with very little. and let me show you. And he showed me his work. And I was like, wow, yeah, I mean, let's set up the meeting. And so Lauren referred me to Sonny, and to keep the story short, that's where all the magic happened. And here we are now with Greg.
Wow, 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 wow. The congratulations again on that. I mean, just in that moment of time of just listening to you, I mean, you highlighted a lot about your family members. I know that you said that where again are they originally from?
Oh, my parents are Chinese.
Oh, okay, because they come from China, and obviously they moved directly to the Bay right after that.
Yeah, my dad came in as a refugee, both my parents' first stop is, I believe, is San Francisco, and I was born in San Francisco. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you found your way down to LA, and you just started to take on you were influenced by obviously the culture out there, and that got you into film.
Yeah, actually, no. So growing up in an immigrant family, especially in the Chinatown community, like creativity, they it's fine as a hobby. It's just your hobby, right? They don't really care when it's a hobby. When you try to make it more of a, your
career,
your career, your ambition, then they start looking at you all side-eyed, like, and I don't know, how explicit I can get on this podcast, but one thing I remember my dad, so I was working in their Chinese restaurant, right? My parents had a Chinese restaurant in Richmond, and I was working there for over a year after college. And, I reached this fork in the way I thought. And I'm just like, like this restaurant, I'm going to be here when I die. Like I could work in a restaurant till the day I die. But what I can't do is pursue this creativity thing that I want, because that's really kind of, it's, when you're young, you have fire, you have your energy. So
you have time too, a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
A little time. You know what I'm saying? I am a female, so you know what I'm saying. And sometimes that is different. I'm not a man.
I get you.
It's different for us. And I remember, and you gotta remember, like I'm a timid girl. I was just a quiet girl. I was a really quiet girl. So imagine after college, I did some internships in the financial district, believe it or not. But then I spent most of my time working on my parents' restaurant because they just rebuilt it after the fire. So I was preoccupied with that. And then, after a year or so, I told my parents, like, hey, I'm moving down to LA. And they're like, why are you moving down to LA? For what? And I'm like,
work at the restaurant.
Well, no, I told them the truth. I was like, for acting, Mom and Dad. And they're like, why are you going to do something stupid like that? And then my dad was like, but that won't work out. Who will want to see your yellow face on screen? And you've got, and he's not, but you have to remember that the type of environment, not just, Asian people, but minorities, Black, brown, Asians, Indians, Arabians, like the society you grew up in America, like it's a little different. They tell the culture, the mainstream culture in America, they tell you in sometimes not in subtle ways, but, a lot of subtle ways where you are not the cool kid,
yes.
So you're just like, what are you trying to do? And plus Asian Americans were statistically, the smallest minorities. So if you think of that in terms of the roles and opportunities in Hollywood, it wouldn't be a lot either. So here are my immigrant parents looking at me like I'm crazy and that I'm dreaming. I just have this big dream that I'm foolish. But, I saved up my little money from working at the restaurant and living at home. And I went out and did my thing. And one thing, though, I would say, to all the immigrant, kids out there is, sometimes mainstream society kind of, it kind of program us to not like our minority culture or who we are because we don't fit in to mainstream, where we don't act like the families on CW network, stuff like that. Right. But I want to say the reason why I've lasted so long to this point is because of my immigrant background. My parents never really sugarcoated how gritty life could be. So when I first moved to LA and I heard some stories of the grind and stuff, I was really prepared to live in my car because I know how hard it can get. I was like fully prepared. I moved right straight into Pico Union area by King Taco on Pico and Alvarado. And
okay, Pico.
right? Is and that the brown community is so similar to the Asian community too. So when I moved there, it even though I'm not Hispanic or Salvadorian, I kind of understood that environment because I came from Chinatown community. So so I kind of understand that too. And I would like to say like it's because of my immigrant background that I was able to endure and I kept my North Star, which was my work. You know, because in Hollywood, a lot of girls and guys can be swayed by the fake fool's gold, the fake glamour, the Hollywood. You feel like, oh, I'm hanging out with people in the Hollywood Hills. And you hang out with them so much, you feel like it's almost your lifestyle or you want it to be. But you have to remember what's your reality and what's their reality. That's their Lambo. That's not your Lambo.
So you're in that time period, and you've highlighted that, you know, being from the Asian culture, and obviously having your parents being immigrants coming over here, your work ethic comes from them. And then from seeing them in the restaurant grinding and putting in the work, you mentioned something about a fire as well too at the restaurant, that they had to rebuild it, you know, and just the fact that you've seen that happen, you know, within your family, you're able to then apply that to your life. You obviously went on to college, then leaving college. And I know obviously, you know, just expressing, you know, to your family members at that point in time, like you're going to take on that risk of just leaving the nest and going out there, you know, having that role of being a female Asian, right? That's actually out there actively, you know, auditioning, looking for jobs and stuff. Like, who were some of like the influences for you, like while you were coming up, or even in the game right now currently? Like, who do you look to as like an influence? I know it's a slim group of, you know, individuals out there, but like, who do you look to?
Do you mean like growing up, like when like growing up or like around the time I moved?
In regards to like when you were growing up, obviously you must have gained interest into moving into this field by seeing someone that probably looked like you on TV, right? Or even seeing a movie and being like, I want to be like this young lady right here, you know? And then when you got into the game, you know, there's a lot of people, like you said, that are fake and, you know, and obviously live a lifestyle that, you know, is sugar-coated. You then have to find those real influences and sometimes real good mentors to kind of help you nurture your gift and your craft. Like, so who are some of those individuals that, you know, have helped you, especially helping you appreciate your Asian culture?
So growing up, you know, of course, I liked Lucy Liu and you know, but a lot of the roles she played, I couldn't really relate to it. Right. In Charlie's Angels, she was like the world-class equestrian, world-class chess master, right? She was that type of character in Charlie's Angels. So, and also you might remember, like growing up in an immigrant community, we don't know nothing about the arts. I know nothing about the arts. I did like to write as a kid, but it's really Michelle Rodriguez. When I saw Michelle Rodriguez on the screen, whether it was TV or the movies, I was like, wow, like girls like that type of girl can do it. Then maybe I'll be kind of accepted too, because I felt like, you know, I related to Michelle Rodriguez a lot more than Lucy Liu. Although I you know, I love Lucy Liu, but Michelle Rodriguez was my girl. I was like, you know, everything she did on screen, I was like, yeah, that's how I would do it too, you know? And so it was Michelle Rodriguez that gave me, you know, it just, you know, and that's the power of representation, even though she wasn't Chinese, but being who she was, I could relate to that. And then moving to LA, I didn't really have mentors. I asked a lot of questions. Every time I did a lot of background, I would get on set and I would ask questions about, hey, how are you getting your auditions? And then when my roommate Shania, she's in Michigan now, but Shania, she was like, hey, there's this commercial class, and this guy named Coach Mike holds it. And I saw some of the commercials for it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, you know, we're trying to make money through commercials, so let's do it. And I want to say so when I first moved to LA, I had to ask a lot of questions. But when I landed in Coach Mike's acting class, he was one of my first mentors. And I should probably reach out to him and thank him again and show him Takeout Girl. But so he's a commercial acting teacher, and he only got 2 courses. He said, you know, I commercials is not that deep. I want you to, you know, like get the tools you need from my class and go succeed and tell people about my class. Right. And so I did all the 2 courses at in Coach his curriculum, and it gave me the tools and the confidence to go book commercials. So within my first year in LA, I did book the Dove commercial and I booked Best Buy. And, and music videos, that's easy. I was just doing that. But that got my foot wet in the industry, and I got my commercial agent that way too.
Oh, so you're signed to an agency?
Now I am, but so when I first moved to LA, his class actually taught you how to submit yourself for representation with the commercial agencies.
Okay.
So that was the last class in his course was how do you submit yourself and get representation. I did that. I got representation that way. And also I booked a Dove commercial on my own because they were looking for non-union women. Mm-hmm. So that's how I booked the Dove commercial. They were looking for a real woman. And so what qualified for a real woman is if you're not in the union. And at the time I was non-union. So that worked. And I got my commercial agent, but I didn't really, I got some callbacks, but I didn't book enough commercials for them. So after 2 years, I was dropped. But that was fine because 2 years into the game, 2 years into the game, my mind was really somewhere else. And commercial was cool. Commercial is always good money. So for all the actors moving to LA and they're like, well, I want to do real acting. I don't want to do commercial acting. Well, commercials is just great money, whether it's commercial, booking the principal role or a commercial background, just get into that. It's just money, to help you achieve your goals. But I did 2 years that I got dropped and I should have been bummed. I was bummed because, it's rejection in some ways, but my mind was on a different goal. And I think 2-3 years into the game, I was like, you know what? I'm doing all this commercial. I'm doing music video work, and I've seen the way. Yeah, I don't want to talk about the men too, but I worked with a lot of women, so I saw how the women around me were acting. They acted like I saw background work for what it was. No matter how glamorous the background be, or you're the main chick in this music video, or whatever. Like they almost take that and they're great brand ambassadors for their social media pages. Like that's great, post all that. But deep down inside, I did the accounting. I was like, this is not a career. This is kind of like stripping. We can't strip forever. The heck are we doing? It's like, the heck are we doing?
You better speak the facts. Come on now,
man. So I see all these girls and like I said in the beginning, you have to be careful of the lifestyle in LA because, we all have a form of hunger, right? Hunger / desperation. And the environment in LA really do prey on that. And so I saw a lot of girls where maybe their initial dream was to be an actress or something, right?
And it shifted.
And it shifted. It shifted to them liking the lifestyle they got close to via entertainment work. And they thought that could be their lifestyle with just by being a woman.
Something that you're saying in there is that obviously you have to stay true to yourself. You got to know that when you walk in the game, because obviously everyone's trying to make it in LA, right? And you came from the Chinatown community and you moved into the Los Angeles area. And obviously one of the ways to stay true to yourself is staying true to your culture and staying true to the people around you. You had mentioned something a little bit earlier about how, some of your influences when you first got to LA was the Black culture. Could you just kind of highlight some of the similarities that the Asian culture and the African-American culture kind of share? Especially when you moved to LA, that made you feel comfortable because obviously when you're comfortable, you start to think differently, you move differently. If you felt uncomfortable when you moved into LA, some of those opportunities may have never came to you. Did you find yourself moving into the Black communities or?
Well, so when I did a lot of music videos, it was a lot of hip hop videos. So, and then I started, making friends and new friends and shout out to Jamar Harkins. He took me under his wing. He's always, the first, second AD for Riveting Entertainment. And it's the grind. As minorities, we understand how hard this game is, and we're not strangers to hardships. We're not strangers to hardships. So that was already immediate, understanding right there and knowing how it is and knowing that there's us and then there's this bigger system that we are trying to climb an uphill battle, to get to. And I relate to people who come from, minority backgrounds. It's always been like that for me, in high school and college, all my friends were, Black, Armenian, Guatemalan, normal for me. So when I moved to LA, it was almost natural to just make friends from, with the other minorities.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, being in this environment, I'm assuming being around several different cultures, is there a cuisine or something like that? Do you speak other languages? Because, you're like in a melting pot right now.
Yeah, I speak Cantonese. I speak Cantonese, which is a dialect in China, southern China.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, something that I always want to, ask, individuals like yourself that are coming up in the game, where there's a small population of you guys that are out there who's actually being seen. There's a good amount of people pushing for it, but, there's only a selected few people that make it to a level where you could actually be seen. How do you feel currently right now when you go to auditions? Does it bother you to see that there's, slim to none, that there's Asian girls, with lead parts in any projects? How do you feel about the industry? Do you feel like it's going to change? Or, the Asian community stepping up? Or do you feel like the doors are even opening up?
So when I first moved to LA, I said I was my own manager, and I would submit myself for, Asian girl roles. And a lot of times they're just the breakdown would say Asian girl, right? Sometimes you see, Japanese, Chinese, but the mindset was, well, even if it's Japanese and you're Chinese, we all had an understanding we're all going to submit it because we're all Asian. We all look the same anyways to whoever's higher up, right? So it was acceptable. I mean, it was acceptable. But years later, now that I have a manager, she kind of told me the shift. So I guess Hollywood went through a period of being really woke. And now I actually have probably less opportunities, because when it's a role for Korean and Japanese, I can no longer submit for those because I'm not that ethnicity. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Whereas before it was kind of open call, whether it was Japanese, Asian, Thai girl. If you kind of look Thai, go ahead and submit, even though you're not Thai. But now they are moving, I think I'm going to use Sani's term. They're moving from one exclusivity to another. And so where there are more Asian roles coming out, but it's more specific. So if it's a Korean project, I can't apply for those, And so, I don't, we'll see how it goes with that.
So now, when going back to Takeout Girl, obviously you in the movie, you're highlighting the hustle, the hustle in the restaurant that I'm assuming has come from your family in the restaurant mm-hmm. business. I know that you have worked very hard in your craft and have kind of pushed through. You obviously have, brought, shed some light on the Asian community, especially being a female as well, too, doing what you're doing. I know recently there's been a lot of hate crimes that have come across the Asian community, which I know has affected, the mindset of a lot of individuals within the industry and also within the community. How could you just kind of speak a little bit more about that and how you feel?
How do I say it? To me, and to the people I know, the Asian people I know, we know racism has always existed against us, and so, and it's like I said, this is America, so it's hard to believe, any minority are so, and sometimes, if you're lucky enough to stay in that bubble, you never experienced it. Hey, more blessings to you. But we've always known it was always there. What was new with the because of the pandemic was I've never seen a global like everybody against Asian, not just America is, or not, not I want to say everybody in America, but this and it's not because of just the virus. I believe it just, the virus was just that spearing cause for the, I'm not good at being politically correct. I'm just going to say that right now, but it's like this.
Speak your mind.
Some people already don't like Asians. We know that, right? For whatever reason, they don't like Asians. And then when the virus came into play, now they're like, see, now I really don't like them people, right? It happens like that. So I was very aware of the underlying reasons for why somebody may not like me. I've just never seen like a global
attack.
attack on Asians, because it's not just in America, it's globally. The attacks on Asians was just everywhere. France, there, I think in France, in Europe, they have more access to acid. So acid was being thrown on Asians over there, Australia, Canada, America. It's just yeah. But it's not just about the virus. There's always underlying things. Yeah. And then because I do believe there's people who never had anything against us. And just because this virus happened, it wouldn't be any reason for them to start disliking us now.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely been obviously being a minority, like you said, some people are blessed to not have been in any situations where they experienced that. But then when you get to a situation where something has affected the world and now people point fingers at a certain culture and you're a part of that culture, it is very hard, especially when you're trying to make it as well too. Because then you're like, okay, if I thought I had limited resources right now, they're even more limited right now, because people are like kind of, Black, listen to me, they're they're giving me the cold shoulder. They're not responding back to me. And they use that. And that obviously could affect, the mindset. I know that you are always, constantly working on, auditioning and moving forward in so many different ways when it comes to the industry. But like, what do you do besides the acting? I know that you're working on the big screen. You obviously have got your first movie up and out. I know you probably have something in the pipeline. Is there something else that, could you tell us something about yourself that most people wouldn't know?
Ooh, I like writing music. I like doing music. I don't do it enough, but that was an outlet for me, because with film, you need so many departments to make one project happen, right? It just goes through a lot of people, but music is more of a self-contained production. You don't need a lot of people for it to be your creative outlet. Mm-hmm. So writing the script at the time, it really opened me up to just writing bars, because writing bars 16 bars is a lot easier than writing a whole screenplay.
True. But you writing, obviously you said you did it at a young age and it just continued on. So I see that you're constantly using your talents and your gifts to kind of catapult you into the next part of your career. And maybe acting right now is that thing, but there's so many different layers and levels that you're going to be achieving in the many more years to come. And especially with your hustle and your grind, your mindset, just having this interview with you right now is even giving me some inspiration. And being a minority and being an entrepreneur myself as well too, and seeing and hearing your story and like how you went from A to B to C. It never stops. Your grind never stops. Your mindset doesn't change despite what's going on in the community and what's around you. You're not walking into these auditions with that, that mindset, like, what, I'm not going to get the job because I'm Asian. You're like, look, I'm just as good as everybody else. And I think the listeners, whether they're from the Asian community or whether there's minorities or just listeners that are listening to this podcast, I think everyone could walk away with that mindset, And I wanted to, as we conclude on our interview for today, I just really want to know, is there anything you want to leave those Zaka listeners with? You kind of highlighted a lot of things in your interview, but is there anything you want to kind of share with the listeners?
Yeah, it's actually going off of what you just said. The world is a crazy place. And it's never fair. It's never fair, and it's sometimes it's more unfair to others than, and all that. One thing though, that I will say, like coming from an immigrant family taught me, because they left a very, unstable, unfair situation to another situation, America, where now, they're not being killed or whatever, but it's different set of, hardships in America, but it's still better than what they left, right? And coming from that type of family, very quick, they kind of teach you that life is not fair and the world doesn't owe you understanding. But with that knowledge, it actually empowers you because a lot of youth, millennials and Gen Zs, we think a lot. We have time to reflect. And I think Charlamagne the God always says, don't do the paralysis by overanalysis. Don't overthink, and I do this to myself when I was little. I'll be like, why should I move to LA? It's so hard. Why would I want that hardship for myself? But, then again, the passion came through and I did it anyways. And that's the one thing I would tell the youth is it'll never be an ideal time for you to do anything. Just keep working. Just keep building brick by brick. And because you only have one lifetime, and the world shifts, politics shift from one moment to the next. So from one year to the next, and you just always have to follow your North Star, and that's what are your, and usually for me, it was my ambitions and my integrity. That was one thing I didn't let Hollywood take. Have I been tempted? Of course. Have people try to steer me wrong and da-da-da? Of course. Luckily, in the end, I looked at my North Star and I looked at all the other mess. I was like, you know what? Y'all do that. I'm going to do me. And a few years into LA, I came across Nipsey Hussle and the Crenshaw album. And I really felt what he was talking about because I could relate to what he was saying. Because he did take the stairs, but he said that he was very proud of the way he did it because he did it his way.
That's right. Shout out to Nipsey. Rest in peace to the homie. Nipsey was an influencer and I think after his passing, I think it is sad that he had to pass, and tragically, in order for people to really understand the amount of things. That's why he moved in silence, and his work will always ring bells within the community, whether it be out on the West Coast, East Coast. That's definitely an inspiration within the culture and within just in life in general. He didn't have to wear a suit every day. He didn't have to be the person in corporate America on the 15th floor, the executive suites. This dude was still down to earth, still at his clothing spot, and just living life the way he wanted to live it. So shout out to Nipsey. I just want to say again, Hedy, thank you so much for today. You really, giving us this time, to kind of share your stories, to talk about so many different cultures, to talk about your background, to talk about your movement, to talk about the movie. I know the listeners are definitely very pleased to hear all of this, and I know that they're gonna, enjoy revisiting this interview several times. So I just want to kind of leave it off. If you want to hear more inspirational stories like Hedy, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow us on social at Zaka Connect, and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts. Again, guys, thank you again for listening to us. Hedy, thank you so much for joining us today on our podcast, and we look forward to following your journey and seeing the many more movies that you're going to be in and actually produce as well.
I appreciate that, Paul. Let's do this again.